Hey everybody, welcome back. It's nice and snowy and lots of sleet falling outside today, so I haven't been able to get outside as much as I'd like to and get some more of those videos out there. I do miss those beautiful 60-degree days, but I'll get back out there soon enough. But for those of you that have been watching, you know that I absolutely encourage all of you to get out there, try to enjoy nature and the weather as much as you can when it's nice. And at any rate, I'll be making some videos again outside soon, especially on the trails. I have a whole park system around me that's really beautiful where my place is built. But speaking of places that you live, tonight that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is the housing issues that are going on, especially here in America, but I'm sure in other countries too, from what I've read and heard. I just am not as informed on it. So anybody that's from some of our other Western countries or pretty much anywhere, you know, what's the housing like there? What's the market like? Because I've heard that it's pretty rough there too. But here in the States, we're experiencing our own issues with everything. Housing prices are up quite a bit more than they ever were with previous generations. And for most people, they're trying to do everything they can to either minimize their cost of living or survive however they can. I was in a much bigger place before I built and moved into the place that I'm at right now. And it has saved me a huge amount of money and helped me, begin to prepare for the rest of my life. But I know a lot of other people out there don't necessarily have those options. And I wanted to kind of talk, well, first of all, just kind of speak to what's causing a lot of this, which is really, when it comes down to it, a lot of our just the cost of housing going up is really mainly because we have an extensive amount of houses that are essentially, houses that a young family would buy, starter homes, being bought up by these properties, these LLCs that, as it turns out, as other people that have been doing documentaries on these companies, these LLCs that are buying up all these starter homes that young families would move into or people would move into if they wanted to shrink down a little bit, usually older homes, not newer. These LLCs, if you trace them back far enough, you start running into what a lot of people I know are calling the big three: Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, who all own shares in each other and effectively, if you really think about it, are really just one big, huge company. And collectively, the three of them own 89% of the S&P 500, which means they're pretty much buying up everything. And according to some numbers, they're thinking they could own as much as 60% of some of the housing market by 2030. That's rather disturbing because basically if you look at the trend of what's going on out there, they'll buy up these homes. They're not flipping them and selling them. They're buying them, keeping them, and renting them and doing everything they can because they own so much of the market or can control so much of the market that it prevents there from being competitive forms of housing really getting a foothold anywhere. And the more that happens, the more that there is a prevention of competition happening. That means that they are leveraged right into this place where you can't really escape having to either have a whole lot of money to buy an absolutely huge place somewhere or pay through the nose for housing, or you have to rent from them. And I personally, at this point, I would have to say people that normally had been fairly financially stable throughout my life are now running into situations where they are stuck, just absolutely stuck. And they're all trying to squeeze into a place together because they've got to figure out some kind of way to survive this housing crisis or else they're going to be homeless. And we all know that if you're homeless in the United States, they treat you like you're a criminal, essentially, unfortunately, especially our veterans. They treat our veterans really bad. It's really shameful, and it makes me very frustrated when I think about that. But I'm just curious what some of the rest of you are experiencing. And I'd mentioned in some of my other videos that I want to encourage people to get involved in their local and state governments as much as possible, especially your local governments, though, because you got to think about it. If people are involved in local government that support ways to have alternative housing. When I say alternative housing, that almost sounds like, like kind of out there on the edge. But I'm talking about, people being able to build in other places where zoning isn't going to be an issue so much anymore, being able to do things like tiny homes for a period of time until they can save up money, be able to build smaller homes that wouldn't necessarily have been approved only because they had limits on the size that you could build a home. Basically insisting that it had to be basically huge or much, much bigger than was ever needed. And, if you look back into history all the way up into the 1940s, 50s, and even 60s, most people lived in smaller rancher-sized homes or smaller homes than that. They didn't live in huge homes for the most part. They just didn't. You only purchased something like that if you had enough money built up from having lived, very smartly and frugally over the years. And then eventually you had enough money to built up to buy a much bigger place. But most people weren't really doing that. And then they eventually updated the building codes and the zoning and everything to where it got to a point to where there was a minimal amount of square footage for a home. And it was much, much bigger than really necessarily, especially for those of us that are, only need room for one or maybe two people. We don't need all that space and all that room, and we want to be able to conserve and not have to spend a whole lot of extra money on all these additional rooms. The last house I was in, 2-story, 4 bedrooms and an office. I can tell you as, I'm in my mid-40s, but I had my children from a first marriage years ago. As they got older and they moved on and they were trying, they're out there in the world, but they're all living in different situations. Well, the house, I'm no longer there, and there were rooms in there that I never went into hardly at all, and they had like dust on the baseboards, and you could hire somebody to come in and clean, but you begin to realize there are rooms in there that you haven't been in years, maybe. Such a waste of money, such a waste of resources and everything. And you don't really think about it maybe at the time, but as the housing crisis begins to loom on us, either you want to be able to find a way to maybe help people out and put them in those rooms, or do something like sell it or get rid of it, because you don't want to be paying for a bunch of space you don't use. And, of course, there's limitations on whether or not you can adjust, fix up, or do whatever you want to with those rooms. But I'm just curious what a lot of people are going through out there, because I've noticed in my area, a lot of these smaller, single family, homes that are, would be starter homes for families, but, they're older ones, they're ranchers, homes that have been around for maybe 20, 30, 40 years, are just being bought up like crazy by these little smaller LLCs that are connected all the way back, and they're like interchangeable names, like the most mundane name you could possibly imagine, but whole neighborhoods are slowly going that direction, and they'll come in and they'll offer cash to homeowners, usually boomers that are they've got an older home that they're going to get rid of at some point, and they'll offer cash to them that's going to beat pretty much any offer that anybody has out there. So if you're coming in there and you're just a regular home buyer, unless you have enough cash up front to completely buy it outright, and above and beyond that to be able to beat whatever they're going to offer these companies, then you'd never be able to get a mortgage that's going to compete with that. And they know it, so they keep beating everybody out. And eventually, if it keeps going through this trend, there won't be any homes left that aren't bought up by big business, essentially. And I know that can almost sound like a conspiracy to some people, but I can assure you, as somebody who has done work in contracting, and I do other businesses now too, but as someone who's done work in contracting, it's a disturbing trend that all of us are aware of. We constantly talk about this, that we're aware that it's just everything's getting bought up, and before long, if this trend doesn't reverse or change, or we don't have competition that undercuts it and sinks it so that people can get back to having houses that they can afford, then we will literally own nothing. And I know that I've heard it said that sort of the way they want it to go is that you will own nothing and be happy. Well, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like it's going that way. It really looks like it's going that way. So I encourage anybody that's out there that's listening to this, get involved in your local government, because being on a board of supervisors, being involved in something where you can help adjust the zoning and the codes that prevent people from getting other affordable ways of housing so they can then build back up to buying these homes, and they can consolidate their funds, and they can basically start to develop a life where they're going to thrive, is possible. And as I mentioned in one of the other videos, I've had people say, well, we shouldn't have to do that. But unfortunately, that's the place that we're at right now. That's the place that we're at right now. We're stuck in a place where everything is spiraled out of control with inflation. Everything is spiraled out of control with elite overreach through corporations and the government overreach working with them, and the massive amount of just fraud and misuse of funds that's being exposed even now. Whew. I can see that it might precipitate some kind of change, but it's really hard to say whether it's going to. I look at it with hope that at some point, really, it's going to come back to an America where all of us can live, especially people that, they just don't have the means to cover every last cost, and they aren't, set in their housing, and they don't have, they're getting ready to retire with a pension and still be able to collect on Social Security. Many, many people, an overwhelming amount of people, don't have any of that. And realizing that, it's a rather disturbing factor. Now, I know that it can be easy to say, well, that's them. That's not me. It doesn't really matter. Eventually, it's going to matter to you. If eventually all the houses get bought up, if eventually everything gets completely owned, it's going to matter to you, because you're going to be so cornered in. They're going to be coming after you. They're going to be doing everything they can to try and get that last little piece, that last little bit, because you'll be the only thing that's left. And that might seem like a dire prediction, but as somebody, I myself am a Christian, and I believe absolutely that there is some prediction as to the way this is all going to go. It's going to get to a point where I believe firmly a one world government is going to get pushed on us. And it's going to get to a point to where those of us that have any sense and logic and reason, we're going to be really on the fringes. We're going to be on the outside. And in the Bible, it describes something very scary about a mark. We've all heard about it, the mark of the beast, where you have to either have it on your wrist or forehead to be able to buy or sell. In other words, if you are not a part of that major, huge government that's going to be running everything, and you are not in with them and in with all of that and haven't basically sold your soul, you just won't be able to live. If you are a dissenting opinion at that point, you're doomed. And that's a scary, scary thing. Now, you might say, Steve, I don't really know if I believe in all of that. I'm not really sure, but you have to admit to some level there are signs of this happening all over the place, and it's kind of a scary thing that kind of shakes you up a little bit when you think about it. It makes you start to think about, what really matters in life, and where does our happiness really come from, and, what happens in eternity when we pass, because eventually we are going to leave this really, really terrible crap show of a place that we're in, and have to face eternity and figure out what we're going to be doing there, because it really does matter. We're going to spend a lot more time there than we are here, and that's something I think that more people should probably think about. And I don't say that in a judgmental way. I myself, far from perfect, very far from perfect, but a lot of this video has just been motivated by taking a look around at everything and realizing how many people are just in really, really dire straits, and how much it's going to take to fix it all, and just the level of corruption that is so entrenched that doesn't want most of us to thrive or make it. And it's a fairly disturbing thought. Well, anyway, I want to hear your thoughts. fill me in the comments. Let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods. I don't care which country you're even in. You know, tell me what's going on with the housing and how you're handling it, and if other people are going through some of the same stuff over there. I mean, I've heard stories and kind of things leaking out here and there, but you don't always know until you talk to somebody who's kind of boots on the ground in the middle of those situations. So, and as always, make sure that you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because I'm going to be putting up a whole bunch more videos, and I'm never going to stop. So that's just the way it is. And I hope you guys are having a great night. And if you're getting snow and sleet or a bunch of mess like I am, that you're staying warm. So I look forward to seeing you all. Talk to you soon.